Hello friends, in the previous video we covered details about castling. Today I will teach you the first golden rule of chess, controlling the center squares. When I say the center squares, I'm referring to these four squares, e4, e5, d4, d5. Most of the grandmasters and high-rated players focus on these center squares. To understand why the center of the board is so important, we must talk about the ideal positioning for the bishop, the knight, and the queen. Let's start with the bishop. The bishop can move any number of vacant squares in any diagonal direction. White bishop's starting positions are c1 and f1. From these starting positions, the bishop can only move in these directions. So, why moving to the center of the board is important for a bishop? To explain this better, here is a simple scenario. We have a white bishop on f1, like this. From f1, this bishop covers only a few squares, like this. But a well-placed bishop in the center or near the center squares is ideal for the game. If we move this white bishop from f1 to c4, like this, look at now here the white bishop covering more squares than the side of the board. Now the bishop can play a more effective role in the game from here. Let's talk about the knight. As you know, the knight can move one square along any rank or file and then at an angle. Knight is the only piece that can jump over other pieces. The white knight's starting positions are b1 and g1. From the starting positions, knights can only move to these directions. So, why moving to the center of the board is important for the knight? To understand this, let's create a simple scenario. We have a white knight on g1. From g1, this knight covers only these three squares. Okay, let's move this knight from g1 to f3 near the center of the square, like this. Now, you can see from this position, the knight can cover 8 squares, d4, e5, g5, h4, h2, g1, e1, and d2. This is an ideal position for the knight, because now the knight can play a more effective part in the game from this position. Now let's discuss about the queen. Undoubtedly, the queen is the most powerful piece in chess. Queen can move any number of vacant squares diagonally, horizontally, or vertically. As you all know, the white queen's starting position d1. From this starting position, the queen can only move in these directions. So why is moving to the center of the board so important for the queen? To understand this, here's a simple scenario. We have a queen on d1, like this. From d1, if we move this white queen from d1 to d4, see now, this white queen is covering so many squares on the board. Keep in mind, a well-placed queen in the center of the board should be a part of your game strategy. Now, let me give you a few useful tips to control the center of the board during the game. 1. Always keep an eye on the center squares as your target. 2. Try your best to move your pieces towards the center squares. 3. Don't let your opponent pieces come close to the center, so try to chase enemy pieces out of the center. 4. Keep attacking the opponent's pieces if they're trying to control the central squares. 5. Exchanging a flank pawn for a central pawn should be part of your game strategy. Let's understand how you can control the center. When you consider squares as targets, it implies that you bring all your forces towards those squares to take control of them. Enemy pieces in the center should be neutralized or chased away. The best way to chase a piece away is usually with a pawn. We already know that pawns play a very important role in center control, and the center pawns play an even more important role than the pawns towards the sides of the board, which are called the flank pawns. Therefore, it is often a good idea if you can exchange a side pawn, flank pawn, for a central pawn. It would mean that you have an extra center pawn. This is all for today's lesson. I hope you have understood why controlling the center squares is important. In the next video, we'll talk about the second golden principle of chess, developing of the pieces. If you like the video, hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel.